In this next conversation, we have a chance to talk about the solutions that are helping to protect farmers and boost resilience at the state level that we just discussed. So I'd like to introduce Ed Wengryn, the Secretary of Agriculture at the New Jersey Department of Agriculture. Round of applause. Hello. Ashley Randle is the Commissioner of the Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources. Round of applause. Bryan Hurlburt is the Commissioner of the Connecticut Department of Agriculture. Round of applause. And Tim Fink is the Vice President of Policy for American Farmland Trust. Give him a round of applause. Before we begin the conversation, I want to thank a few of our in-kind partners for making the event possible, including our reception later, Bobo Link Cheese and Bread, Forager Project, Nature's Path, Applegate, and Driscoll's. Give them a round of applause. Thank you all for being here. I know how busy you are in your own states, and it's really just wonderful to have your expertise here. I want to start with a question about the impacts that the climate crisis is having on farmers in your states. And I'm wondering, Commissioner Randle, if you can go first.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you. Well, it's great to be here with all of you and certainly talking about a very timely topic. When we think about the climate crisis, I think back to 2023, where in Massachusetts we had a February 4th freeze, a May 18th frost, and flooding that started in July and continued for several weeks throughout the western part of our state, and the impacts that it had on our farming community. We didn't have peaches, and certainly as consumers, we know that everyone loves peaches and having a fresh peach in the fall. We had cranberries that were impacted in the fall harvest. We lost acres and acres of vegetables, and the apples were also impacted. So for our farmers, the word that really comes to mind is resiliency, and how can they be more resilient in planning for future years. This past year, we had a drought. And so no 2 years are the same, and we're seeing more and more of those extreme impacts. And so for our farmers, trying to be proactive and plan, whether it's putting in irrigation for years where there are droughts, or putting in more indoor agricultural growing centers such as greenhouses and high tunnels to be able to protect against extreme weather events. But resiliency really is the name of the game now, I would say, for our farmers and how they can be more resilient going into future growing seasons.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Secretary Wengryn and Commissioner Hurlburt, what are you all hearing from farmers?
So I think farmers are creative in adapting to climate change and these issues. We were talking about cranberries as one of the crops New Jersey grows, and we're the southernmost point cranberries can grow. So as our climate gets warmer, that's going to be a challenge for the industry. And they're spending their money on research to make more heat-resistant varieties. Mm-hmm. They're also looking at the dietary side and producing less acidic so they can bring a product to market with less sugar added to it. So they're listening to what the consumer's saying, but they're also listening to what the environment's saying. Right. So I think that kind of creativity, all of our farmers are going through, no matter what your crop is, the varieties of grapes that our wine industry grows, the types of fruits and vegetables. I think farmers are adaptive that way, but they also put the science behind what they're doing.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, I would add, I mean, those are two really good answers, so there's not much space here for Connecticut. But I would add that I think, farmers by their nature are innovative, right? They've got to try different things. They've got to be responsive. They take what they've learned from previous years and apply it to the future. And I think what we've seen with the extreme weather events, I mean, this is my 6th year as commissioner. Knock on wood, this is the first year I haven't asked for a secretarial declaration for a disaster. So for 5 years in a row, we went from drought to flood, throw in a tropical storm every now and again. And so farmers are learning from those experiences. As Ashley said, they're installing irrigation. But they're also working on soil health. How can we make sure that we're draining too much water more quickly from the fields, but allowing enough water to stay in the soil when we have these drought periods? They're trying different seeds. They're doing little things that make a big difference for these really extreme weather events. They've also changed their mindset, which I think is interesting. It used to be, you can have a bad year every 5 or 7 or 10 years, and you use the good years to build up capital, build up equity, buy new pieces of equipment, invest in your farm. And when you have these extreme weather events every year, you never get ahead. And so as a commissioner in Connecticut, my thought is, how do we help people get ahead? What state investments can we make, whether that be in programs or technical assistance, or partnering with our federal USDA agencies to make sure that they can make those investments? Because the best farm is going to be a profitable farm that's going to stick around for the next generation.
I want to stay on that point for a minute because I think it's something really important that you're identifying. There's no question that farmers are creative, they're adaptive, but extreme weather events are happening more and more frequently, and they're more and more severe. And what you've described, building that resilience, building that adaptability can be costly. And so is what is happening at the state level for all of you enough? Or I mean, the federal cuts are having a big impact.
You're going to give us some money now? Is that the next part of it?
I wish I could.
Danny, I didn't know that when we got here. This
I
is
wish I
wonderful.
could.
Thank you. I'll say from the farmer perspective in Connecticut, in 2023, we created with the legislature and AFT's help the Climate Smart Ag and Forestry Grant Program. And I was petrified because you worry that nobody's going to apply for this grant pool. We had $7 million, which was a big program for Connecticut. So we went out and we hustled the department. We made a lot of phone calls. We did a lot of listening sessions. We talked to organizations. And we said, here's what we can do. We need to move this money quickly, and it needs to be adaptable to whatever the individual farm is going to do. And state bureaucracies don't always respond that well to those sorts of challenges. So we did large grants to multiple organizations who were re-granting after that. So I was worried we wouldn't be able to spend $7 million. We're going to look like idiots to the legislature and to the governor's office that we asked for all this money and nobody wanted it. We had requests from 74 organizations that totaled $55 million. So when people say, do farmers want this? Yes. Yes, they need help getting there, but they absolutely want it. They need it. They want to make their investment in the farm. And so we've been able to use that money very wisely. But that was a demonstration to me that there's this huge need out there, this unmet need that the feds, and this was before the federal cuts, the feds haven't met.
Yeah. Tim, I want to ask you what American Farmland Trust is seeing in the rest of the country.
Yes, I think when you look at the West, for instance, you're looking at snowpack issues. You don't restore enough of that snowpack, you end up having major issues of water availability. You go even further west to California, you see the wildfires. I'm originally from Iowa, and in the last 10 years, my parents have had 2 derechos that they've experienced. That was a word they didn't even know existed until recently. And so you're seeing all these examples, but whether you're experiencing drought or you're experiencing flooding, so much of the key is soil health. And if it were easy, it would be done. In fact, it actually costs money for farmers to do these types of practices. They need technical assistance to do these practices. The federal programs often provide cost share, which is only covering a portion of the cost of doing a new practice like cover crops. And in fact, the federal programs, the chief program, like the #1 funded program is the Environmental Quality Incentive Program, that turns away 2 out of every 3 farmers historically. Just that's how much demand there is and how little supply.
Yeah. Commissioner Randle, if I can turn to you now. Massachusetts put out an exciting plan focused on land protection and viability. Can you tell us a little bit about that and want other folks to learn from it?
Sure. So in December of 2023, we launched the nation's first farmland action plan to really focus on farmland access, viability, and protection. We know that through AFT's Farms Under Threat report that by 2040, we're expected to lose 74,000 acres of farmland in Massachusetts if we don't have a very intentional intervention. So that really prompted us with that stark number when we saw that to be able to swing into action. We developed the plan and wanted really to make it a plan for long-term, looking to 2040, 2050, and what resources were needed to help farms not only access land, but the viability piece is really critical. It's one thing to have land access, but how can you have a sustainable, viable business on the land? And so we recognized, and I think everyone will agree, that partnerships are really key to be able to help farms, whether it's funding or technical assistance. We need to have partners in this work. So most recently, we launched a grant program for around $2 million to bring in partners to help support the action items within the plan. So regional planning commissions, municipalities, nonprofits, farming organizations, and really the goal is for them to partner with us to identify what action areas within the plan they can help implement. And that way we'll be able to protect land at a faster rate and also make it more accessible to new and beginning farmers in the coming years.
You mentioned this viability piece, and I think this is so key to what we're talking about. To make to have young farmers want to stay on the land or come to the land, they need to be economically viable and sort of intellectually stimulating. Farms need to be places where people are learning constantly. Can you talk about sort of the technology and innovation that's happening?
Sure. So I think to your question, when we look at farm viability, there is an interest in being able to adapt and to incorporate the innovation on farms. A lot of that, again, goes back to funding. So at the state, we've really prioritized different grant programs through our Climate Smart Ag program to help with energy investments on farms, whether it's agrivoltaics or roof-mounted solar to help bring down those costs and also move towards a more sustainable energy future on farms. For our dairy sector, they're very excited about robotic milkers, and with labor being a challenge in addition to land access, we have 95 licensed dairies in the state, and 12 of them have gone to robotic milkers, and we've helped to fund that on farm. Also anaerobic digesters and being able to help in terms of food waste and creating energy on the farms. So innovation really is key to the future viability of our farms, and I think in the Northeast we're really well positioned in terms of our commitment to climate smart agriculture and the goals that we have as states to be able to move towards the greener future and a more viable future on farms.
Absolutely. Secretary Wengryn, are you seeing some similar examples happening in your state, New Jersey?
So yes, and in that land sort of management area, it's one of those critical things. We've had a 40-year-old farmland preservation program that wasn't being competitive with the current market rate, with the expansion of warehouse development and the growth in that sector. We're a transportation state where everything moves through New Jersey at some point. But we revalued how we look at farmland preservation, and where we always did based upon development value, you criticize the natural resources of the land. So the water recapture components, the wetlands, the forest lands, like those were penalties. And now we're valuing those as part of the offer we're making landowners. So you'll get your development value plus the natural resource value. And we're seeing a 30% increase in offers to landowners going through the program. And that's
great. Please give that a round of applause. Amazing.
So that's re-engaging the farmland preservation side, but then with that, we can use the funds we got when we dedicated the corporate business tax to land preservation in New Jersey to the stewardship side. 20% of those funds in farmland preservation go to stewardship, and that's where we can help them build their soil health, do the economic part of farming, and find out what those farmers need to be viable and successful. And so yeah, it's leveraging those kinds of funds, those opportunities, and really reinventing how we've been doing something for so long. But when you find it's not working, even government needs to make changes and do things differently.
Sure. I feel like all three of you, your jobs have become much more difficult or maybe exciting at the same time over the last decade. Tim, how do you help these folks, these leaders in food and agriculture in their states, help them, gain the technical assistance, the new ideas that they need to help farmers in their state?
I think, for one thing, AFT has played a pivotal role in providing on-the-ground support for farmers, some of the education on soil health. But in my own role, I spend a lot of my time trying to advance the federal policy side of things. One of the things that would really help is the actual passage of a bipartisan farm bill. John Piatti earlier referenced, some of the changes that came out of the Big Beautiful Bill, whatever it is you want to label it. But there's certain changes that can only happen in a farm bill. The second thing is providing additional support for farmers to help other farmers in adopting those practices. AFT is doing some of that work on the ground, but having more federal support in that area would really redouble the technical assistance needs and help those farmers. And I think the third thing that we're actually leading on in terms of trying to advance within the next farm bill is a federal funding match for state soil health programs. All of these wonderful programs they're mentioning, there's a great opportunity to just basically match that funding almost one-to-one to both take existing programs that have been so successful in the state, as you've heard today, and expand them, but also incentivize other states to establish their own programs.
Thank you, Tim. Do you all have other wish lists for the farm bill that you'd like to see? I'd love to hear them.
Well, we have 7 minutes, so I'm not sure if we have enough time to go through our wish list.
I can go over time. I'm the moderator.
One of those wishes is for a farm bill.
Right?
Yeah, right, yeah.
Exactly.
That's at the top of the list.
One of the things that's been on my mind for the past couple of years with these extreme weather events, and we talk about new and beginning farmers, we talk about diversified farms in the Northeast. The USDA has put a lot of money. They just announced a new market access program, $300 million for trade. That's great, but the farm stand that I go and buy vegetables at during the week isn't shipping, right? They're not doing international trade. What they need is a tool to help them through these extreme weather events. And so if we don't talk about crop insurance reform, if we don't get a tool that actually works for small farms, then we're not going to have small farms. Because the reality is a small farm can't grow to a medium farm, can't grow to a large farm if within their first 5 years they go through an extreme weather event that puts them under. They have no more capital, they have no more ability to invest. They've got to go and find a different job. And so, to me, crop insurance reform is probably one of the baseline things that need to happen in the next farm bill in order to make sure that we have the growth opportunity. And the stunning example that I'll use to demonstrate the failure of federal policy on this is the USDA announced $20 billion for disaster payments this year. Well, if you have a crop insurance program that works, you don't do a supplemental $20 billion program. You just have a program that works. And that would be smarter for everybody involved, including the policymakers, including the USDA, including the CCC. But it's a challenging topic because it's really difficult to get into the weeds on.
Yeah.
But without it, it's kind of baseline.
Yeah, thank you. Commissioner Randle.
I would add, we were actually talking about this last evening, the focus on specialty crops, especially where we are in the Northeast, and recognizing small and mid-sized farms. Across the country, more and more farms are getting into specialty crops as a way to be resilient with all of the extreme weather events. So really prioritizing funding for specialty crops, but also the support systems for farmers in terms of mental health. There was a program that was created within the Farm Bill through the Farm and Ranch Stress Assistance Network that allowed states to establish mental health programs at their Department of Agriculture or with universities. And that program has been critical for our farmers, especially in 2023 with all of the weather events. But without that funding, it's very hard to sustain the programs.
Sure, and those mental health services are especially needed right now. I'm wondering for the online audience in particular, if you can explain that specialty crops are what we eat every day that we love.
Yes, specialty crops would be really any of the crops other than corn, wheat, soybeans. So typically commodity crops, those would be classified as. Specialty crops are the fruits and vegetables and nuts that we get to enjoy from our Northeast farms and across the country.
Thank you. Secretary.
So in that same vein, I have a diversity of specialty crops in the state, but I also have diversity of growers. So as we talk about crop insurance, my northern part of the state, closer to the population, they're direct marketers. They sell direct to the consumer. The crop insurance only pays them a wholesale value. They lose that retail value in a disaster. And that doesn't cover their costs. So even though they're paying into the insurance fund, getting a benefit in the event of a disaster. It's not going to cover their cost of doing business. They have done pilot programs to do revenue protection. They don't market it enough, and they don't actually fund it to the level it should be, because they kind of go on county averages instead of, the farmer would actually have to produce their receipts to show that they deserve a bigger payment.
Yeah.
And that makes it complicated, and that doesn't then protect the revenue. And then again, the wholesale growers in the southern part of the state have their own challenges with more land, more crop loss, because they're larger producers. They're not farming on
Right.
20, 30, 40, or 50 acres. They're farming on 200, 300,
Yeah.
400. And so, making sure that those programs can actually be beneficial is critical.
Absolutely. We have a couple of minutes left, and in my role as a communicator, I hear a lot from young farmers who are really, really interested in gaining access to land and growing those specialty crops that we all enjoy. I wonder what advice all four of you have for young farmers who are feeling the pain of what's happening in the world right now. Secretary Wengryn, do you want to go first?
So I got encouraged this year as we were doing our ag convention policy development. Half of the farmers that were in the room to do our resolutions process were under 45. And so to me, that's showing there's an encouragement. And I think that's one of the things they need to do, is to come to the table to say, we want to shape the policies that are going to impact us. So it's great that you've amended the Farmland Preservation Program and that we're going to have better access to land through this. You have to help us get there.
Right.
We have to be part of the economic engine that does that. And so we are looking at ag viability and new and beginner farmer programs in the state. We had our first issue of our new beginner farmer report earlier this spring, and that's going to guide how we start moving forward.
Exciting. Thank you. Commissioner Randle.
Sure. So someone that I really admire, Congressman McGovern, I was with a couple weeks ago, and he was saying how it's easy to feel hopeless, but when we look around at the farming community, you feel hopeful. And I thought that was well put, because we do see an increased interest in young farmers wanting to come to the Northeast and start their farming operations. And whether it's on an acre or 10 acres, we've been able to connect them with resources at the department, but also other farms for mentoring programs and to have that mentorship. And I think that's really key as young farmers try to get into the industry. So we're really trying to make those connections through a beginning farmer course, through mentorship opportunities, as well as a land licensing program that we have at the department, where it's $100 a year to lease the land for 5 years and gain access to the land. And that's the first time many young and new and beginning farmers are able to really get onto the land and start their businesses after those 5 years.
Very cool. Thank you. Commissioner Hurlburt.
We've got 5 seconds, so I'll be
No,
quick.
you're all right.
I think
gotcha.
I think don't give up. Number one, it's challenging, but don't stop doing it, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the first thing. Let's get over that hurdle, and then I would say get involved. Not only to Ed's point on with policymakers, they need to hear you, just like any other small business. Every legislator wants to do a ribbon cutting. Every legislator wants to see, a new small business in their district. Invite a legislator to the farm. But get involved with your fellow farmers. Go to the farmer meetups, whether it be something like a Farm Bureau meeting, or in Connecticut, we have a new Connecticut Farmer Alliance, and share your story and listen to the stories that are in the room, because you're not the first person to have some of these challenges, and take
Right.
advantage of that cumulative knowledge that we have as a community.
Amazing. Such good advice. Thank you all so much for being here. Thanks to Tim as well.
Thank you.
Please give them a round of applause. Thank you all.